Hello and welcome to the Built Environment Marketing Show, hosted by me, Io Abbas. I'm a marketing consultant, speaker, trainer and content creator, of course, and I work with a variety of engineering and architecture firms. Today is a very special episode. It's March and it's shaping up to be a bit of a month where we're celebrating women. We've had International Women's Day, we've had Women in Construction Week, we've had Mother's Day, and I even got to take part in a women's march, which was dedicated to celebrating the voices of women from the city, past and present. My voice was actually broadcast into Paternoster Square, and I got interviewed on the local news as well. My guest today, Sadie Morgan, also took part in this event, and I'll put a link into the show notes so you can hear all about it and watch what happened. I met Sadie last year for the first time when I was sat on a bench in the main thoroughfare of UK Reef. And in terms of a networking tip, that's probably one of the best places I've ever sat, to be honest. So many people stopped to say hello. Anyway, back to the interview with Sadie. Last week, I travelled to her offices in London Bridge. And it was a lovely, lovely conversation to have because we're both really passionate about women finding their voices in society. So it seemed a really, really good theme for the chat and for the interview, which I hope you enjoy. Happy listening. Hello and welcome to the show, Sadie, and thanks so much for inviting me to your offices, which are lovely. So can you introduce yourself, Sadie, who you are, what you do, or what you do, because you do quite a lot.
I do. So I'm Sadie Morgan. I'm a founding director of DRMM Architecture. It's where you are, and it's very lovely to have you here. I have so many different roles and responsibilities. I'll try and knock a few off for you. So I am a commissioner on the National Infrastructure Commission. I sit on the board of Homes England. I founded and helped set up the Quality of Life Foundation. I sit on the board of the Major Projects Association. I chair the New London Sounding Board. I'm a professor at Westminster and Cambridge. And I think that'll do for now.
I think that's quite a lot. I mean, that was it, because I knew I was coming in this week. Yeah. And like I said, I was just walking home from the school run yesterday. And that's often where I get my ideas. Yeah. Right? But it was so interesting because I suddenly thought, actually, what's really interesting is that it's International Women's Day on Friday. Yeah. There's loads of events happening and all this kind of stuff. And I'm kind of like, how do people find their voice? And I think you've done really well in finding your voice, or as we said when I was at Mace, we used to talk about your realm of authority. Yeah. And having that message that you bring to the world and all that you do. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with you. So
sure. No, I think that it's interesting when you reflect on at what point in your career you actually, as you say, found your voice. And it was probably quite late in my career for me. And there's lots of different reasons for that. But I think once you've discovered and what you're good at, and then coupled with a kind of confidence that comes with experience and or having some kind of success at the moments or times when you've used that voice. I think that's a kind of that's a good combination of things that help you kind of think, well, actually it is. I have something worth saying, and it's important that you say it if you believe passionately in it. So I believe passionately, in good design. I believe passionately in the ability of good design and thinking to transform people's quality of life. And I believe passionately in the environment and people and place and drawing on all of those things and then combining that with my experience. I think that actually I have I have something to say, about those topics.
So how did you start to find your voice? Was there any particular things were there particular things that you did, or was it a confidence builder or something like that?
I think it's a confidence builder, actually. And, I've always, I set this practice up with Alex Doriker and Philip Marsh. We now have 3 new amazing directors, but at the time, it was just the 3 of us, and we all sort of took on different roles. Alex would be the spokesperson.
Yeah.
I would be the person who kind of looked after the hearts and minds of the kind of team and help build the team. And Philip would, do the work. Somebody had
but
to.
everyone has to have different roles, though, isn't it? And you all have your strengths, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think what that meant was that when people asked me to give a talk or, speak at something, do a lecture, I would always say, oh, no, that's Alex's job. He's much better at it. And I think that there came a time in combination with the fact that so if you park that idea and then say, okay, what else was I doing at the time? I set this business up with Alex and Philip when I was 24 years old. So I've never worked for anybody else. But what I have always done is to do various things outside of my place of work, because I believe in having, kind of bringing different perspectives and making sure that you're not just kind of some navel gazer who doesn't really have any, who's kind of in an echo chamber of themselves and their own business. So I've always done other things. And at the time I was on the council of the Architectural Association and gave an impassioned speech. I can't remember what about. And then somebody came up to me and said, you've got to be the next president, And anyway, I had this sort of extraordinary situation where I was made the president of the Architectural Association. And at that time, I was the youngest and second only woman in 100 and something years history.
Gosh.
150 years history. And I think that I suddenly thought, actually, I have a responsibility. Yeah. I can't keep saying, oh, this is too difficult. I don't really like public speaking. I'm not good at it. Let Alex do it.
This is Alex's job. It's not.
Yeah.
You've got something to say.
Yeah. And also, there aren't, at that time, luckily, we're getting better at it. I mean, we're still nowhere near where we need to be. But, at the time, there were very few female, directors of practices, very few female, kind of speakers. We don't have that, at that time. Nowadays, I think lots of people understand that they cannot put a panel on unless it's diverse. And, but that wasn't the case then. So I suddenly thought, what, I've just got to, put myself out there. And I had some excruciating, absolutely excruciating times when I'd stand up and, kind of have stage fright and not say anything for what felt like, 10 minutes. So it wasn't a perfect kind of.
But then is it like a muscle that you kind of need to kind of exercise? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think you have to just, get over yourself.
Yeah.
And interestingly, at first I think the reason why I struggled at first was because I was trying so hard to be intellectual and clever and, be able to answer all the questions about, kind of ask me about the economy or ask me about this. I'd be listening to the Today program before I did, just so I was up on the current affairs and, and then suddenly you're just like, actually be genuine, be honest about, what your strengths are, what you're interested in, what you can speak with some kind of credibility on. Yeah. And then suddenly the world kind of opens up to you and people want to ask your opinion because you are, you're speaking truth to power. You're speaking about something that you have, as I said before, you have some kind of knowledge of. Yeah.
But also, I also think it's also that thing of not being afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, yeah.
Which a lot of people, you just see them and you're like, they're just talking rubbish.
Yeah. No, I am totally. I remember when I first arrived on the National Infrastructure Commission, it was the most intimidating thing, honestly, I'd ever done. My Lord Heseltine, Lord Adonis.
Oh gosh, they are seriously into infrastructure in a way that is just.
And George Osborne, the Chancellor at the time, is sitting around the table, sitting next to Demis Hassabis, who's the guy who started DeepMind, probably as 9 people in the world that can do AI like him. opposite the chief economist to the World Bank. And I just sat there with my kind of eyes wide open thinking, don't ask me anything. And after a while, I learned that actually it was okay to say, I don't know what this means. Yeah. And everyone talks in acronyms and so forth. And I remember...
transport is ridiculous.
Yeah, and so I remember asking some really kind of... I did become the person to ask the exam questions, and actually it does uncover. I might say, "What does that mean?" And everyone's going, "What does that mean?" And
they don't always know.
No, they don't. But there were times when I could see a few people rolling their eyes in a nice way. It's like, "Oh, come on, Sadie, really? You don't know what that is?" But I kind of got fine about that. And learned that, it's better to say, I don't understand, because otherwise you'll never learn.
Yeah.
And also you can't contribute to a conversation where you're half in, half out. And people are very generous about taking the time to explain something to you, however high powered they may be and high profile. I think if there's anything I've learned, they are incredibly respectful of you asking a question, and very rarely will put you down because of it.
I think as well, it's interesting because I've just done a series on transport, on integrated transport and how you can get that delivered. And what was really interesting was that when you speak to people, it's, a lot of it is down to communication.
Yeah.
And some, the language we use.
Absolutely.
Engineers and designers being more focused on their spreadsheet or their outcome or what that thing that they're trying to design rather than actually, does it work for that family?
Yeah.
Can they use it? Have you ever gone back and looked at it?
Yeah.
I think it's that's the missing part in a lot of what we're doing. And it's like, if people don't understand what, the value that HS2 will bring to me as an individual, then I will sit there and go, don't spend my money.
Yeah, I think that we need to learn how to articulate the value of things.
Yeah.
And how actually, we are able to have proper, open and honest discussions about the trade-offs, which there inevitably are and will always be.
Yeah.
But I think language is something that I have always struggled with, mainly because I'm an intelligent person, but my vocabulary, I have a backstory about my education and various other things, which means that I don't have, I don't always find the vocabulary or have the words or can string the sentences together in ways that others can. And I've always struggled and found that a bit embarrassing at first. And now I'm just like, well, actually, sometimes that's good.
It's a strength, right?
Yeah, because, that puts me in a bigger group of people who are like, oh, she doesn't know. She doesn't know that word either. I'm like, tell me what that word is,
But also, I just think if we just start talking in acronyms or whatever, or technical jargon, and then it's just like, we lose people.
Of course,
and we can't communicate what we do as an industry. And and that's a massive fail for us.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And we just look like we're, kind of trying to, we're just stuck up and,
So in terms of finding your voice, did you do any courses? What did you do? What did you have? What was your kind of way, or did you literally just throw yourself into it?
That's really interesting. I did actually throw myself into it, and but I think I'll tell you a story. So when I first I went for a big job, very high profile job, and ended up. When they'd sent me I made a big fuss about why haven't you invited, I was completely naive. I was like, and they're like, oh, have you spoken to the headhunters? And I'm like, what's a headhunter? Anyway, I spoke to this awful man who was just like, you do realise this is really high profile. You do realise that, you have to, and I was like, and I was so cross about it that I kind of, having not even remotely thinking I would necessarily want the job, I'm like, I'm going to get this job.
Yeah.
And then they sent the they kind of deigned to send me the kind of job description. And I'm like, oh God, I can't possibly do any of this. How embarrassing, how humiliating. I made this big thing and now obviously I can't do it.
Yeah.
And the office manager at the time, who we took from a very young girl who'd stayed with us and I'd mentored and looked after her. And she's lovely. She's called Anne. And she's like, Sadie, you can do this standing on your head. And I'm like, really? And she's like, we are going to rewrite your CV. And literally.
You just needed someone to say that, right?
And she sat there, this young woman who just sat me down and said, went through my CV. And she said, you could do this. And then she said, and I'm going to give you a fake interview and you're going to stand there and you're going to. It was the most, I still have, my blood run cold remembering it. Because it's like the hardest and most embarrassing thing is to stand in front of your friends or peers and, kind of
you feel like they're going to throw stones, but they're not.
And it was absolutely brilliant. And she was fantastic. And then ever after, if I had a very, very important speech or something, or kind of interview, I would always test it in front of Anne, and she would say, I would say, oh no, forget that. I didn't. She's like, no, I'm not going to. You have to start it. You can't just stop. You've got to carry on. She was my hardest critic, and still remains to this day. In fact, but. So I think practice is important, especially if you, if you need that kind of boost of confidence. And now, because I do so many, I do many talks and lectures and so forth, I'm a bit, I have a kind of
you got your way, your system,
kind of, bit more confidence, as you say. It's a kind of muscle memory.
Yeah. Hi, it's Io here, and I just wanted to interrupt the show quickly to say a bit more about what I do. I'm a digitally led marketing consultant, and I specialise in working with built environment firms just like yours. I think there's so much more that AEC firms can do to make the most of the digital marketing opportunity. And if it's something that you would like to explore working with me, how to make the best of online and in-person worlds, then do get in touch. Email me at io, which is AYO, at abbasmarketing.com, and let's have a chat. How does your kind of architecture, what you do in terms of architecture and the Quality of Life Foundation, how do they all connect together, or what do you think is the thing that you kind of bring to those roles?
Well, I think, it's very well documented, but I was brought up in a community, a commune that my grandfather started, and I have a very deep-rooted sense of kind of the importance of looking after other people. And often I never actually listened to myself, but if I did, I'm sure I'd go, oh dude, be quick, like rolling my eyes at myself. And it's not a kind of pious thing, it's just that's in me, it's inbuilt in me. And so I spend a lot of time and effort and energy trying to ensure that anything that I do, or if I have the ability to change, it's around how do we make this better, for communities that it serves. How can we ensure that as built environment experts, we are actually improving people's quality of life? And the foundation was set up on the back of my kind of slight annoyance at the time about the conversation going back to aesthetics. Is it traditional? Is it modern? And I'm like, do people actually care? Yes. And then I got shot down by the architectural profession, of course. It's like, of course they care.
No, they don't. And they want to know they've got somewhere to live that's decent, that works for their family.
So I'm like, well, probably the fact, is it a pitch roof or a flat roof is less important to them. That has it got mold running down? Do they have a good view? Is it big enough? Does it have a garden or some green space next, in walking distance? Does it, all of these things that make a difference to people's quality of life. So I think that it's trying to shift the focus, if I can, to a conversation that very often is around cost, money, time, to saying, actually, can we just look at this a bit more holistically? Can we think about how all of these different decisions can be drawn together, and can we do something that is, has the best outcome for the planet, for people, as opposed to what can often be quite narrow conversations. Yeah. And I say, particularly in the kind of infrastructure space, around, often it's just saying, just stop, sit up, look around, let's think about kind of a little bit more three-dimensionally in our thinking, not
just let's put up 5 offices, this, that, the other, the homes. Actually, how's this actually going to work as an ecosystem?
Right? And I think there's a lot of good strategic thinking that could be done about how we design and deliver our infrastructure, our homes, in a way that is much more cohesive and has a much smaller footprint on the on the planet's resources and so.
And how receptive were people to that message?
Very. I think they're very receptive once they. I think actually just going back to how you communicate that. Yeah. I think if I've learned anything over my career, it's that you need to have conversations that aren't kind of aggressive. And I often say I'm a critical friend. So I won't try to, kind of embarrass people or kind of roll my eyes or just say, you're serious? You haven't, really?
No, you can't embarrass people. That's the worst way to get them to shut down, isn't it?
So I think that it's that sort of, okay, we do have, we need to work on this, we need to think hard about how to draw this policy through, or we need to have a policy even, or how do we sort of culturally embed this in an organisation? How do we do all of these things? So I try and be a positive help and support as opposed to somebody who's just kind of having a go because it's not good enough or it needs to do better or whatever it might be. So I think that there's a lot to be said about the way in which you work with people in order to try to help them to kind of improve on the things that you're interested in.
I was saying also on the Quality of Life Foundation, I mean, the graphics, the design, how you communicate and structure, it's beautifully done.
Yeah.
And that's an important part, I guess, in part of getting the message out and getting people on board. I'm guessing that visual style as well, right?
Yeah, so that, I mean, I can't...
No, I didn't say it was
No. But so it's my brother and me who set the foundation up. Yeah, Matthew, and because he runs the foundation, I've now stepped away because we're a charity, and that doesn't. But he does an extraordinary job, and he is a great communicator, and he really does understand I think the importance of getting all of those things right. That kind of the community, the sort of it isn't good enough just to sort of say things. You have to communicate. There's so many different ways.
We all take in messages in a different way, don't we?
Yeah. So I think that the team, he's got an amazing team there, and they really understand that. And I think, as you say, that sort of draws through everything that they do.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's really lovely. And I was going to say, in terms of the opportunities that have come from you finding your voice, are there things that you sought out, or did they come to you as a result of what you were doing?
Oh, that's a really good question. A bit of both.
Okay.
I think that now and again there are things that frankly have just really annoyed me or it's like, why isn't anyone doing this? Why is this and I'm like, well, actually stop moaning about it, do something about it.
Yeah.
So a number of the Quality of Life Foundation was around actually just going around to developers and saying, come on, you've got a responsibility. And at the time, the late Tony Pidgley was incredibly generous and helped set the foundation up.
Fantastic.
And so that there was then often it's me just one, it's like, how can you coalesce a group of people who can help you do something?
Yeah.
And of course, the more you do those sorts of things, the more people then ask you to help do them. So it's a sort of, you become somebody who's identified in, it's like, oh, Sadie can help.
Make it happen.
Yeah. And I've always struggled saying no. And I always try to help. And I think now I'm so very busy that I've learned that you can, like, over-promising is worse almost than saying, no, and I'm a needy person. I like people to like me. So, I need to also get over that.
Where's Anne?
Yeah, exactly. So I tend to sort of say, oh, yes, of course I'll help. And then letting people down is terrible. So I've got better, actually. In fact, my great friend, Alison Nimmo, who's a complete inspiration and mentor to me, is she said, Sadie, you can, she gives me good talking to, and saying, you don't always just have to give, and sometimes you can say no.
I mean, it's interesting because I've been talking about finding your voice and things, and it was interesting because I did an article that came out last week about whether the architecture profession is imploding, because I'm like, there's a lot of kind of noise around what's not working in the profession, but not so much talk about solutions, which is one of those things. And I'm kind of there going, actually, how do we address this rather than, whispers in corners of that practice is like that, and, and it's quite interesting that a lot of people don't express their opinions.
Yes.
And why do you think that is? Or
I think that increasingly you're in a world where you can be caught out, and the more senior you are or the more responsibility you hold, the easier it is for people to kind of pick a hole or find something you've said, take it out of context. I gave a lecture the other day, for example, and, I'm always honest, but sometimes you have to be a little bit careful about, the things that you say, and of which I am, but often I, kind of be, if you're, I overshare. And somebody came up and very sweetly said, that was such a great lecture. Thank you so much. You were so open and it was great. When you answer the questions so honestly. And I'm like, yeah, it's fantastic because, it makes such a difference sometimes when you're not, you're not being recorded. And she went white as a sheet and said, oh no, we did record it. And I was like, oh God. So there's a sort of, I think we have to be a bit careful that we allow people to say or test things out in the open. Sometimes you test something by saying it, to a group of people and they say, no, that's really not, that's not good because of these reasons. So then you debate it and you may change your mind at the end of it. But if you're not able to say, oh, I'm not sure I agree because what about this or what about that? And if you're very risk averse or you're cautious about having those conversations, then I think I think we have to be very careful about allowing people safe space, a safe space to have those conversations.
And also to learn and test, right? Because I think that's the issue. Yeah. But I guess it's interesting because saying that, I'm just thinking because I guess we've got into this whole kind of soundbitey world now, haven't we?
Yeah.
Where actually on socials you've got 60 seconds. You know what I mean? It's all a lot more.
Yeah.
So you lose the context and you lose the nuance and you lose all the kind of stuff around something.
Yeah.
So I guess there is more of a risk, isn't there? That someone will just go, Sadie just said this. Yeah. And it's like, actually, no, you didn't hear the whole context of that. Yeah.
But I think also what's interesting, just expanding on that a little bit and saying, actually, I often have like, high level conversations with people who are struggling and confused about certain issues, and they, whether it be around gender, race, and it's like, well, I desperately want to do the right thing, but I'm not entirely clear about how to do it, and I don't know, should I say this and can I say that, and
And the rules change, right?
The rules change the whole time. And I think that we need to allow people a little bit of flexibility. And I think particularly an older generation who have, and I'm not excusing it, but have very, very learned behaviors.
Yeah.
And are sometimes, you need to, rather than pull them up, you need to pull them up about if they say something inappropriate or wrong. But you have to do so in a way that says, no, that's not an appropriate thing to say, rather than saying, do you know what so-and-so said this? And immediately kind of condemning them to a very embarrassing kind of...
Because that's going to make them shut down as well, right?
I think so. And, and there is I think there's we just have to be, I think, kind of, as it's about context. Yeah. It's about context. It's about the kind of meaning behind something often, as opposed to just immediately saying, taking the words and reading something into them that isn't right.
And I guess, what's kind of on the horizon for you next? What are you looking to do, or are there any kind of new things on the horizon that you're kind of looking to champion or push or do?
Yeah, I'm very interested actually in thinking about how to support and help organisations to deal with kind of difficult things. And I run these soirees which invite women to kind of come and hang out together.
Yeah.
And there's no agenda. It's just a great evening where senior women are allowed to bring along one woman who would never get to, kind of be in their presence. And we have we have really great places we go, lovely food, lovely wine, and it's just a very, very supportive, wonderful atmosphere. And I'm looking to think, well, actually there's a huge untapped resource out there of women particularly who maybe they've left the profession, they're looking to get back in, they don't know how, they're super talented, but they don't have the CV. And I think there's a real opportunity for a kind of program or agency that says, okay, we know that businesses have very difficult problems and issues that they don't always want to share, but they need help to sort through and work out. So I've been thinking about setting a business up to help do that. And kind of Charlie's Angels that come, you get three amazing professional women from lots of different walks of life. Yeah. They bring with them a woman who would never get to sit at that table, and they help and support an organisation to unlock some tricky issues or a project or whatever it might be. So watch this space.
I was going to say, she's like, I'm corralling that together. That's my next thing.
Yeah.
I love that you get all these ideas and you see the issues and you're like, right, what can I do? And it's great. It's.
Yeah, I think it's a lifetime of either chairing panels or sitting on panels that are supportive of, so you bring a group of people together to help bring a different perspective to a knotty, difficult problem, and you're not saying we're going to solve that problem, but you're going to say we're going to look at that, we're going to help you to look at that problem from different angles. And it's incredible how often people are like, you can't see the wood for the trees, you're so involved and you're so strung out, and by the time you've got to the point where you need help, you're probably really dug yourself in a deep hole. And so you don't need to bring in the big consultancy teams who are going to,
charge you 10K just to get out of bed, right?
Exactly. and then, kind of write this humongous report. You just need a group of people to come in and say, okay, this is a safe space. We can have some difficult conversations and we can help you get out of this hole. And doing so, you're going to help some women in this instance, because as well as having these three amazing high profile women, they're going to bring with them, some women who are going to get to sit at this table and have this conversation and get the experience of being in this situation.
Yeah.
So I think there's plenty of ways in which we can use, as I said before, untapped talent or groups of people who need to be included and who aren't included and who have such valuable insight and such valuable kind of perspective to to sort of come into the profession, or any profession. Doesn't have to be this one.
Yeah, fantastic. So my final question. So any tips for someone looking to find their voice? How would you say they could get started? Or
I think the first thing to do is just be honest and be, you will only have integrity if you talk about things that matter to you and that you have some kind of knowledge about. And I think you will have much more knowledge about some things than you expect. I was so embarrassed about my upbringing. I found it, I was different to loads of people. I had a very different upbringing. I'd never talk about it. But it shaped me and it made me the person I am. And the minute I started kind of having the confidence to talk about it, I found that people were really interested. And, and I was like, oh, they actually are interested in this. And so it's actually become a cornerstone of the thing that I talk about. And because it's shaped me and it's shaped my views and the things that I'm interested in. So I think the first thing to do is say, don't try and be anyone else. Don't try and, me reading the Financial Times and the kind of money section is like, don't go there, Sadie, because you're never going to be able to talk about that.
It's really boring.
Yeah. And also you're never going to be able to speak with any authority on this. So people are automatically going to think, well, she's I'm not going to say the word, but you know what I mean. So find something you're good at, and you can still read up about. I mean, it doesn't stop you learning about it, And so I think that find what that is, and then speak confidently about it, and people will find you interesting, and then people find you interesting and want to talk to you.
And they gravitate towards you, right? That's the thing.
It snowballs.
Yeah. Anyway, on that lovely note, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Built Environment Marketing Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes, which will have useful links and resources connected to this episode. You can find that on abbasmarketing.com. And of course, if you like the show, please do share it with others on social, as it helps more people to find us. See you soon.